Shalom Aleichem. Mishnah Yomi is continuing in our second day of Yevamot. We are in chapter 1, Mishnah Gimel, and understandably it feels like we've jumped into the deep end. There's a lot of new concepts and terminology compared to Chagiga and Seder Moed, Mazel Tov again on Seder Moed. It's basically a whole new world in Yevamot, and again, it's considered one of the most complex and difficult areas in all of Jewish law. So we should expect to struggle a little bit to understand this, but as Chazal say, our sages taught us, Lefum Tsara Agra, according to the work you put in, is the reward that we reap. So far, yesterday we learned about a case where a brother died with no children, Lo Aleinu, and he had 2 wives, and one of those wives was a relative to one of the other brothers. That brother not only does not do Yibum or Chalitza to the wife he's related to, the widow he's related to, but even to a co-wife, if there is one. Now, we might have thought this rule always applies if there's some other man out there with 2 wives, and one of them is a relative, and then he dies, and the man was completely unrelated to the man who wants to marry the co-wife. We might have thought that's forbidden. Mishnah Gimel teaches otherwise. It says, Sheish arayot chamorot me'elu. There are 6 erva situations, that means a forbidden marriage due to family relationship, that are even more chamor, even more strict than the ones we mentioned in Mishnah Aleph. Mipnei shenesuot le'acherim, because these women we're about to mention can only marry someone else, cannot marry a brother. We'll see that these women that we're going to teach, they're not only forbidden to the surviving brother, they'd be forbidden to any of the brothers, because all of the brothers in question by Yibum share a father. If a man has a maternal brother, they share a mother, but of different fathers, there's no mitzvah of Yibum or Chalitza. Whereas if he has a half-brother from a different mother, but they share a father, there could theoretically be a mitzvah of Yibum or a matir of Chalitza. So these 6 we're about to teach, Tsaro Tehen Mutarot. Their co-wives are allowed. Since we're going to see these women can't marry any of the brothers that share a father, therefore their co-wife is permitted to marry any of those brothers. And these aren't brothers of her widow, of the husband who died leaving this widow. That guy is completely unrelated to the brothers we're talking about. That's what the words mean, nisuot le'acherim. They have to marry someone else. Now the Mishnah lists them: Imo, his mother. A man cannot marry his brother's mother, even if it's not his own mother. It's his brother's mother. That's one of the arayot listed in the Torah. Eshet Aviv, the wife of his father, obviously even if it's not his mother. Now, wouldn't that be redundant? Imo and Eshet Aviv. So Imo, the case could be where they weren't married, where his father and this woman was not married. It could be there was a case of mafuta or anusa. Perhaps the father seduced this woman, or there was a coercion, and in those cases, there's an option. The woman actually has the option, if she's seduced, to marry the man, but she doesn't have to. So there could be, theoretically, a case where a man has 2 sons, and one of the sons is from his wife, and one is from someone he was not married to. And these sons cannot marry the unrelated woman. The Achot Aviv, the sister of his father, his aunt, Achoto Me Aviv, his sister that they share a father but have a different mother. Eshet Achi Aviv, the wife of his uncle. The Eshet Achiv Me Aviv, the wife, it would be the ex-wife in this case, of a brother that shares a father. So all of these relatives listed can't marry any of the brothers that share a father. So when they were married to someone else, as obviously they have to be, they can't marry any of the brothers, and that other unrelated man passed away, then the tzara, his co-wife, another wife he was married to at the same time he passed away, is permitted to marry any of the brothers. Now, Mishnah Aleph and Bet yesterday was based on the premise that the tzara, the co-wife of an erva, of a relative, cannot be married in Yibum and doesn't need to be freed in Chalitza to marry someone else. But this was not actually an agreed upon halacha 2,000 years ago. Mishnah Dala teaches Beit Shammai matirin. The Academy of Shammai allowed hatzarot la'achim, the brothers to marry in Yibum the co-wives of a relative. So all those 16 cases we had in Mishnah Aleph, that was Beit Hillel's opinion. Beit Hillel Osrim. So Mishnah Aleph follows Beit Hillel's opinion that the co-wife of a relative cannot be married in Yibum. And therefore also, according to Beit Hillel, she would not need chalitza before she marries someone else, an unrelated man. So chaltzu, so if these women listed in Mishnah Aleph did chalitza, received the chalitza from one of the brothers, as we'll describe in detail later in this Masechta, Beit Shammai poslin min kahuna. Beit Shammai says she cannot marry a Kohen. We'll see a woman who did chalitza is similar to a grusha, similar to a divorcee, and she cannot marry a Kohen. Beit Hillel machshirin. Beit Hillel says she can marry a Kohen because the chalitza was meaningless. It wasn't needed in the first place. Nit yabmu, if one of the women in Mishnah Aleph actually married in Yibum, one of the brothers of her deceased husband, Beit Shammai machshirin. Beit Shammai says if that second husband passes away, she would be allowed to marry a Kohen. She hasn't done anything wrong. The Yibum was actually a mitzvah that she did. Beit Hillel poslin. Beit Hillel says she cannot marry a Kohen because she was involved in an illicit relationship because there was no mitzvah of Yibum. And if there's no mitzvah of Yibum, then this woman is the wife of his deceased brother, and it's forbidden if there's no mitzvah of Yibum. So we see this is a fundamental argument, a fundamental machlokis about the personal status of the co-wives involved in the situation of Mishnah Aleph. But the Mishnah here explains, Afal pi she'ela osin ve'lematirin, even though there are cases where where Beit Hillel would say it's absolutely forbidden for such a co-wife to marry a Kohen later, and Beit Shammai would allow it. Elu posing, elu machshirin, and there are cases vice versa, where one doesn't allow and the other one does allow. Even though this was the case, lo nimna'u Beit Shammai milisa noshim mi Beit Hillel. They didn't hold back. The Beit Shammai members, the followers of the Academy of Shammai, they didn't hold back from marrying women who were from families that followed Hillel. V'lo Beit Hillel mi Beit Shammai, and vice versa. The people of Hillel, the students of Hillel, would marry women from Shammai. Now, this doesn't mean they ignored the situation that had created some sort of problematic issue for the other academies' halacha. It means they told them that they kept track of who had had a yibum and who had a chalitza, and if they had married a Kohen later, and what the situation was, so that if someone from Shammai came to a family that followed Hillel, and there had been a yibum situation in the previous generation, they would let them know, so they would go and marry someone else who didn't have any questions. So when Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel intermarried, they weren't ignoring the halachic position of the other side. They actually knew full well about the other position, and they would acknowledge if there were any issues that would prevent the marriage according to the other academy. And the Mishnah also adds, Kol taharut ve'tumot, all of the pure items and impure items, shahayu elu mitarin elu mitamin, that Beit Hillel would say that they are tahor, they're ritually pure, whereas Beit Shammai would say they are tameh, or vice versa. There are some occasions where Beit Shammai, who's usually strict, is more lenient than Beit Hillel, even though they had differences of opinion on fundamental matters of purity and impurity. Lo nimna'u, they did not hold back, osin taharut elu al gabe elu, from preparing something tahor, using materials or kalim borrowed from the other. And again, so if a woman from Beit Shammai went to her neighbor, who was in the Academy of Hillel, a follower of Hillel, and wanted to borrow a mixing bowl, then if there was a halachic problem with the mixing bowl, according to Beit Shammai, then that woman from Beit Hillel would let her know. And this is a profound lesson in Jewish unity. Sometimes the way to overcome differences is not to ignore them or bury them, but it's to acknowledge that the other person has a fundamental difference of opinion, but to find common ground and come together anyway. And we've seen recently when the Jewish people, when Am Yisrael is under threat, that the Jewish people come together no matter what our background is. And we hope and pray that even when the threat is gone, God willing very soon, that we will take a lesson from Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel and acknowledge our differences and work through them to find common ground and be together as one united people. Am Yisrael Chai. Yashar Koach, and keep up the good work.